You walk into a room, someone looks at you the wrong way. Words slide through their teeth like venom. You hear it, you feel it, but you do not move. Why? Because their storm is not your weather. Understand this. Reactions are rehearsed. Most people are puppets of their own emotions. Pulled by strings they never bothered to see. You cut the strings. You don't flinch. You don't respond. You observe. That's the first step. Anger, what is it? Heat without fire, noise without weight, a signal that says, I'm not in control. You choose differently. You make peace a practice, not a passive thing, no, a sharp, silent discipline. One that watches everything, swallows nothing. You don't let people rent space in your mind. If they push, let them push air. If they provoke, let them speak to silence. Because you know, you don't defend your peace, you own it. Someone insults you. That's data, not destiny, their opinion, just static. And you're tuned to a higher signal. You see what they can't, that their anger has nothing to do with you, that their chaos is self-contained. So you don't carry it. You never get angry, not because you're weak, but because you've mastered power, the kind of power that doesn't roar. It just stands, calm, immovable, like a mountain ignoring the wind. Reactions are a choice, not a reflex. This simple idea can change everything about how we move through life, especially in situations where others are trying to provoke us, offend us, or manipulate our emotional state. Most people live on automatic. Something happens, someone says something, and immediately they respond. It's not deliberate, it's not thought out, it's a reflex. But here's the truth, that reflex, that knee-jerk reaction, it's not hardwired. It's trained, it's learned, which means it can be unlearned, replaced, reprogrammed. We were not born reactive. Watch a child before the world gets to them. They're present, curious, unbothered. But over time, we're shaped by tension, by voices, by expectations. We start picking up patterns. Someone raises their voice, we raise ours. Someone cuts us off, we shout. Someone mocks us, we retaliate. It becomes automatic. We stop choosing. We start reacting. Now think about what it means to reclaim that choice. Imagine every moment of conflict as a fork in the road. Two paths, reaction or response. Reaction is fast, emotional, unconscious. Response is slow, intentional, awake. One comes from habit, the other comes from clarity. When you begin to see your reactions as choices, you regain control, not of the world, not of others, but of yourself. That's all you need. This isn't about being numb or indifferent. It's not about suppressing how you feel. It's about awareness. It's about asking, what is actually happening right now? What is this person trying to make me feel? What story am I telling myself in this moment? And then, what do I want to do with that? Most people never pause long enough to ask those questions. They're already yelling, already offended, already plotting their comeback. But you pause, you wait. You watch your own mind like a hawk. That pause, that's the power. It's the microsecond between stimulus and response. It's the space where freedom lives. You start to realize that most things are not worth the emotional energy we give them. Someone rolls their eyes, someone spreads a rumor, someone says something ridiculous. These are invitations to drama, not obligations, and you don't RSVP to every emotional invitation that shows up. You scan it. You assess it. You ask, does this deserve my peace? Is this about me or about them? Do I need to react? Or can I choose to observe? And here's what you start to notice. When you stop reacting, people lose their grip on you. The button they used to press, it no longer works. The emotional bait they dangled, you don't bite. They become confused, disarmed, because their power came not from their words or actions, but from your reaction to them. Without it, they're empty. This is not about pretending. It's not about plastering on a smile while you seethe inside. It's about genuinely seeing the situation for what it is. Someone else's behavior, someone else's mood, someone else's wound acting out. You don't have to carry it. You don't have to absorb it. It can pass through you like wind through open hands. Training yourself to respond instead of react is a daily discipline. It starts with self-awareness. Noticing your patterns, catching the early signs, the tight chest, the racing thoughts, the clenched jaw, and then asking yourself, gently but firmly, what story am I reacting to? What's real and what's just habit? It also means letting go of the need to win every argument, to correct every false statement, to defend yourself from every jab. Not because you can't, but because you don't need to. That need, that's ego. Ego wants control, validation, domination. Your higher self doesn't need any of that. It's grounded in something deeper. It knows its worth isn't up for debate. It knows that peace isn't found in being right, but in being centered. And it's not just about big confrontations. It's the little things, the driver who cuts you off, the coworker who interrupts you, the friend who forgets your message. These are tests. Small, constant tests. Each one a moment where you can say, I see what's happening here. I feel the impulse to react, but I won't. I choose something else. I choose stillness. I choose clarity. I choose not to hand over my state of mind to anyone else. In time, your nervous system learns that it doesn't have to go into overdrive just because something unexpected happens. Your body learns safety in the silence. Your mind stops scanning for threats. You stop assuming that every challenge is a battle. You begin to trust yourself, to know that whatever comes, you will meet it with presence, not panic. And the more you practice this, the more your baseline shifts. You become less reactive across the board. Fewer things trigger you, fewer words rattle you. You create internal spaciousness. People notice, they sense the groundedness in you. They may not say it, but they feel it. And ironically, your lack of reaction becomes your loudest statement. It says, I know who I am. I don't need to prove it. I choose my energy. I own my peace. This kind of presence is not easy. It's forged. It's honed. It's practiced when no one is watching. And the moments where you slip, because you will, those are part of it too. They're not failures. They're feedback. Each slip is an opportunity to reflect, to adjust, to sharpen your awareness. And every time you catch yourself, even a second earlier than before, that's growth. Eventually, the world stops controlling you. Not because the world changes, but because you do. You become immune to petty games, immune to childish provocations, immune to the constant pull toward outrage and offense. You are not passive. You are powerful, because you don't give others the steering wheel to your emotional state. Reactions lose their grip when we stop giving them our unconscious loyalty. You replace them with presence. You replace them with choice. That is the essence of emotional freedom. Not silence, but sovereignty. Not coldness, but clarity. You respond from wisdom, not from wounds. You act from vision, not from habit. And in doing so, you step out of the game entirely. You don't fight fire with fire. You let it burn out on its own, because your peace is not reactive. It's rooted. It's not situational. It's unconditional. And no one else gets to decide when you feel it. Anger is noise. Choose silence. The idea may seem too simple, even idealistic, in a world where everyone has something to say, something to prove, some line to cross. But beneath that simplicity lies something powerful, the understanding that most expressions of anger are not strength. They are eruptions of internal noise, static, turbulence, chaos, and in that chaos, most people lose themselves. They believe they are asserting power when they shout, slam, insult, retaliate. But what they are really doing is bleeding control, bleeding presence, losing sight. You have to learn to hear anger for what it really is, a symptom. Not of injustice, not of principle, but of disturbance. It is a signal that something within has been shaken, challenged, or revealed. But the real strength lies not in following that noise to its loudest expression. It lies in hearing the noise, standing still in the middle of it, and choosing silence instead. Because silence is not the absence of words. Silence is the presence of mastery. When someone angers you, what's the first thing that happens? A rush, not in the world but in your body, a tightening of the chest, a tensing of the jaw, heat in the face. This is the nervous system preparing to defend itself. It is primitive, it is instinctive, but it is not ultimate. You are not bound to that signal. You can notice it without acting from it. You can breathe through it. You can let it rise, observe it like a wave, and let it fall without grabbing it. The person who chooses silence is not disconnected. They are dialed in. They are aware of everything. They are feeling the shift. But they are not becoming the shift. They are watching, not participating. And in doing so, they hold the highest position in the room, the one who cannot be dragged down by other people's storms. Because here's the truth about anger. It feeds on reaction. It needs a mirror. It needs a partner. You yell, they yell louder. You insult, they insult deeper. But when you stay silent, it collapses. Not because you are weak, but because you refuse to play. You don't absorb their energy. You don't reflect it. You contain it, not to suppress it, but to transform it. Transformation doesn't happen in chaos. It happens in clarity, and clarity only arises in stillness. Anger is loud and blinding. Silence is focused and illuminating. When you choose silence in a moment of anger, you don't just hold back. You create space, space to see the truth, space to notice the wound beneath the words, space to recognize that most people who try to hurt you are not really seeing you at all. They're speaking from their own fracture, not your failure. Their attack is about them, not about you. Their tone is a reflection of their own inner mess. Silence gives you the superpower of detachment, not disconnection, but conscious space. The ability to witness what is happening without becoming it. To notice what someone says, feel the sting, and still decide not to sting back. To hear the noise and realize, this is not my music. It doesn't mean you let people walk all over you. It means you decide the terms on which you engage. If you do speak, it is not out of pressure, it is out of power. If you do respond, it is not out of impulse, it is out of choice. And sometimes that choice is to say nothing at all, not to retreat, but to preserve your peace like sacred ground. Silence also changes you. It rewires your nervous system. When you stop reacting to every provocation, you start building emotional immunity. You stop being shocked by every comment, every look, every push. You start realizing how predictable people are when they are ruled by anger. You see through it. It becomes almost mechanical. Someone gets triggered, they lash out. Someone gets insecure, they attack. It's a loop, and once you see the loop, you no longer feel the need to join it. This gives you an edge, not a cold edge, but a sharp awareness. You become precise with your energy. You stop wasting it on things that don't grow you. You stop yelling to be heard by people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop arguing with people who only want a reaction, not resolution. Anger often comes disguised as strength, but it's rarely anchored. It's fire without a fireplace. It burns everything, including the one who holds it. Silence, on the other hand, is structure. It's the discipline that turns heat into light. It doesn't mean you don't feel, it means you don't leak. You contain the fire, and in doing so, you direct it. You refine it. You use it for illumination, not destruction. You also begin to see that not every silence is the same. There is silence from fear. There is silence from suppression. But then there is the silence of someone who has seen too much, understood too deeply, and no longer needs to shout. That is the silence we aim for. Not emptiness, but sovereignty. In practice, this takes effort. At first, silence may feel like swallowing glass. Every part of your body will want to react, to lash out, to prove a point. But you will remember, anger is noise, and you do not live in noise. You live in signal, so you take the breath, you sit with the urge, you delay, you let the tension live in you without mastering you, and eventually it passes. The people who live in noise will call you distant. They'll say you're cold. They'll wonder why you're not reacting like you used to. That's fine. Let them wonder. Let them spin. Because you're no longer a source of entertainment for other people's dysfunction. You are not part of the game. You are the quiet force that watches the board. And silence isn't always external. Sometimes it's internal. Sometimes it means not spiraling into mental narratives about what was said, what it meant, how you'll get even. Sometimes it's the choice to let the thought pass without indulging it. That too is silence, the kind that happens inside your own mind. That's the deeper layer, because inner silence leads to outer peace. You'll also begin to notice that silence creates clarity. When you're not tangled in the emotions of anger, you can actually see the situation. You realize the insult was projection. The sarcasm was insecurity. The aggression was fear. And once you see that, you stop taking it personally. You understand that most people don't know how to handle their own emotions, so they try to offload them onto you. But you're not a dumping ground. You are a mirror of stillness, and that stillness reveals everything. You don't need to raise your voice to be heard by the right people. You don't need to win every battle to walk in peace. In fact, the most powerful people often say the least. They say what needs to be said, nothing more, nothing emotional, nothing wasteful, because they know their silence speaks louder than most people's noise. Over time, you begin to value silence like gold. You stop filling it with explanations, justifications, comebacks. You become comfortable with letting people think what they want. You stop rushing to correct every misunderstanding. If someone is determined to misread you, silence is often the only answer that honors your energy. There is nothing passive about this silence. It is not avoidance. It is presence. It's the power to stand firm in the middle of chaos and not flinch, to hear the noise and not echo it, to feel the provocation and not feed it. The more you live this way, the more peace becomes your default, not because life gets easier, but because your mind gets quieter. You realize that peace is not the absence of conflict, it is the absence of reaction. And that's something you choose, moment by moment, word by word, breath by breath. What happens inside you matters more than what happens around you. Most people live their entire lives the other way around. They spend their days trying to control, adjust, or fight everything outside them. People's words, people's actions, traffic, tone, timing, consequences, praise, criticism. Every external shift becomes an internal storm. But the real shift begins when you reverse that direction. When you start protecting your inner environment like sacred territory. When your internal state becomes non-negotiable. When your peace is not something granted by others, but something guarded by you. It begins with observation. Before anything can be controlled, it must be noticed. Most people don't notice themselves. They notice others. They judge others. They compare, react, analyze, blame. But they rarely turn the gaze inward. They don't see the flinch in their chest when they're criticized. They don't notice the subtle anxiety when they're ignored. They don't examine the way one person's tone can ruin their whole day. But if you start observing, a pattern appears. What bothers you most about others is a mirror for what's unresolved within you. Someone cuts you off in traffic, rage. A colleague interrupts you, resentment. A friend forgets to reply, abandonment. None of those reactions belong to the present, they belong to the past. They are emotional fossils, stored responses, and each one reveals a door back into yourself. The world is not bothering you, it is revealing you. When you begin to understand this, you stop chasing control over others. You realize you can't silence everyone who talks too much. You can't prevent every insult. You can't correct every misstep, but you can start managing your responses. You can slow down the space between trigger and reaction. You can go inward, and inside that space you can start asking, why does this bother me? Where is this feeling really coming from? What fear, wound, belief is being touched right now? Most of the time, what bothers you isn't about them, it's about you. It's about the version of yourself that you haven't yet healed. The child who wasn't heard, the teenager who felt invisible, the adult who's still seeking validation. And if you're not aware of that, then every moment becomes a trap. Every person becomes a trigger. You become a puppet, pulled by invisible strings. But self-control begins when you cut those strings, not by force, but by understanding. When you see the pattern, you're no longer inside it, you're above it. And from that height, you have power. You don't suppress the emotion. You observe it. You honor it, but you no longer act from it. You feel the wave, but you don't drown in it. People will always be people. They'll interrupt, they'll forget. They'll disappoint, misunderstand, reject, insult. That is their nature. You cannot edit the script of every human around you, but you can edit the script that plays inside you. And that inner rewrite is the only place where real peace can take root. Because once your internal state no longer depends on other people's behavior, you become untouchable, not numb, not indifferent. Untouchable meaning nothing enters without your permission. Not every look becomes a judgment. Not every silence becomes a rejection. You start interpreting events differently. You stop personalizing everything. A late reply is just a late reply. A cold tone is just a mood. A rude comment is just pain leaking from another person's wound. You don't need to hold it. You don't need to wear it. You let it pass through you like wind through an open window. And when your attention returns to yourself, you start asking new questions. How do I want to feel today? What state do I want to maintain no matter what? What is my baseline, my anchor, my default? These questions matter more than any drama, any insult, any minor disruption. Because they point you towards self-ownership. They return your power to where it always belonged, within. To reach this point, though, you need daily practice. Just like physical strength is built through repetition, emotional regulation is built through consistent inner work. You have to train your nervous system to stay calm under pressure. You have to practice returning to yourself when everything outside is pulling you away. Breath helps, stillness helps, writing helps. Silence helps. Every time you interrupt a reactive loop with awareness, you carve a new path. You rewire your response, and over time, those paths become highways. There's also a deeper understanding that emerges here. Most external conflict is internal conflict, displaced. People project their pain, they deflect their shame, they mask their insecurity with control, anger, sarcasm. Once you see that, you stop expecting emotional maturity from everyone. You stop taking things at face value. You begin to interpret behavior with compassion, not with personal offense. That doesn't mean you excuse everything. It means you don't absorb everything. You protect your internal state like it's sacred land. Because it is. Your peace is your temple, and not everyone deserves access to it. You also learn to regulate what enters your mental space. You stop rehearsing imaginary arguments. You stop obsessing over what you should have said. You stop replaying insults like broken records. Those habits drain more energy than the actual events. What you think about becomes what you feel. So you choose your thoughts like you choose your clothes. Carefully, intentionally, with clarity. If something doesn't serve your peace, it doesn't deserve your time. And if someone repeatedly brings you out of alignment, they may not deserve your proximity. Protecting your inner state means setting boundaries, emotional boundaries, mental boundaries, energetic boundaries. It means saying no without guilt, saying yes without fear, walking away without explanation, staying quiet without shame. The more you live this way, the more your inner world becomes your compass. You no longer ask, "How do I make them stop bothering me?" You ask, "How do I remain unbothered regardless?" That shift changes everything. You stop expecting the world to calm down. You become the calm, even in chaos, especially in chaos. Because when someone tries to trigger you and finds no reaction, they're left only with their own discomfort. And sometimes that's the most honest mirror you can hold, not by punishing them, not by proving anything, but by staying grounded, clear, undisturbed. Self-control doesn't mean pretending you're okay. It means knowing that your okayness isn't dependent on anyone else. It means knowing that you have a center, and no one else can take it from you unless you give it away. And here's something most people don't tell you. The more you master your inner world, the more other people feel it. Without words, without confrontation, they sense the clarity, they sense the strength, and often they rise to match it. Or they fall away. Either way, you remain grounded. People are constantly trying to sell you emotional bait. Every glance, every tone, every subtle provocation carries a question beneath it. Will you take this personally? And most do. They take the bait without hesitation. Someone rolls their eyes and your heart tightens. Someone ignores your message and your day feels ruined. Someone talks over you and your entire body responds as if it's under attack. But what if you refused? What if you decided, not in a loud or forced way, but in the quiet recess of your mind, that you no longer participate in these games? That your attention is your wealth, and not everyone gets access to it. When you recognize that people often operate from their own chaos, you stop making their chaos your own. You begin to see how much of what disturbs you isn't even about you. It's projection, insecurity, wounded ego, habitual drama. The moment you stop internalizing their mess, you start reclaiming your peace. The one who's always snarky, that's not your concern. The one who gossips about you, not your job to correct. The one who pretends you don't exist, let them. Every time you respond with stillness, you become the mirror in which they see themselves clearly, not by force, by contrast. It's easy to believe that the only way to deal with difficult people is to fix them, outwit them, confront them, or remove them. But there's a quieter way. You don't need to match energy. You don't need to defend your dignity. You don't need to run narratives in your head about who is right. Instead, you simply remain calm, clear, present, not cold. Clear, not distant-rooted. When your center is stable, their turbulence becomes background noise. This doesn't mean you're passive. It means you're intentional. You don't give your emotions on lease to the world. You don't make everyone your emotional landlord. Because once you realize that your reactions are currency, you begin to spend them wisely. Just because someone offers drama doesn't mean you need to invest. Just because someone triggers you doesn't mean you need to act. You can notice the feeling, breathe, and do absolutely nothing with it. That's power. When you're not compelled to respond, when your sense of peace is greater than your need to be seen, heard, understood, or validated by others. Most conflict is a performance. One person plays victim, another plays hero, another plays villain. And the show only continues if you accept the role they offer you. But when you decline, when you walk off the stage, when you stop playing parts that don't align with your peace, the play collapses. Not because you forced it to end, but because you refuse to feed it with your energy. You also realize that silence isn't weakness, it's clarity. It's choosing your battles with surgical precision. It's understanding that not every argument deserves a response. Not every jab deserves a counterpunch. You can be deeply aware and still remain unmoved. You can sense someone's intent without letting it touch your spirit. That's not suppression. It's transcendence. It's a refusal to shrink your awareness to fit someone else's small moment. Every time you rise above the bait, you train your nervous system to expect peace as the norm. You wire your body to respond with neutrality instead of escalation. And over time, that becomes your new baseline. The things that once disturbed you now amuse you. The insults that once shook you now echo without impact. You don't become numb, you become free. Because once you stop giving people the power to unbalance you, you start experiencing reality in a new way. You begin to realize that your internal state is not a reaction, it's a choice. And that choice becomes easier the more you value your own energy. When you truly grasp how limited your time and focus are, you stop wasting them on people who drain them. You stop trying to educate the willfully ignorant. You stop trying to decode passive aggression. You stop trying to get closure from the emotionally unavailable. You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You simply redirect your energy to what nourishes you, sustains you, grounds you. There is a kind of invincibility that grows inside you when you no longer need the world to behave in a certain way. When you no longer need people to agree with you, to treat you fairly, to validate your perspective. Because then your peace becomes unconditional. Not because you don't care, but because you care more about your state of being than about temporary outcomes. That's the real liberation, not reacting to preserve your image, but staying still to protect your frequency. It takes practice, though. At first, you'll feel the urge to react, to correct, to argue, to explain, but each time you pause instead, you create space for wisdom. Each time you don't react, you reclaim attention. And in that attention, you begin to notice subtler things. Your breath, your posture, the tightness in your chest, the stories spinning in your head. Those small details become your path. Because once you can watch yourself in those moments, you become your own teacher. You don't need someone else to regulate you. You become your own regulator, and this also changes how you see other people. You start noticing how reactive they are, how quickly they grab the bait, how easily they're pulled into spirals. But instead of judging them, you feel compassion, because you've been there. You know what it's like to be ruled by emotion, to be at the mercy of another's approval, to be dragged into battles that leave you drained. And now that you're free, you don't want superiority. You want understanding. You don't want to win. You want to be well. There will still be moments that challenge you. People will still test you, sometimes unknowingly, sometimes deliberately. They'll poke, prod, provoke. But those are the exact moments that show you how far you've come. The real mastery is not in never being triggered. It's in not obeying the trigger. The power lies not in having no reaction, but in having a choice about that reaction. Eventually, even your boundaries become quieter. They're no longer loud defenses. They're simply ways of being. People feel them before you speak. They sense your clarity, and most adjust accordingly. Those who don't either fall away or remain in their own noise, unable to penetrate your silence. And yes, sometimes silence will be misinterpreted. They'll say you're distant, cold, arrogant, passive, fake. Let them, that's their interpretation, and it says more about their lens than your truth. You're not responsible for how others perceive your peace. You're only responsible for protecting it. When someone throws shade, you don't need to throw it back. You can step out of the way, let them wrestle their own shadow. When someone tries to provoke you into reaction, you can simply smile, nod, walk away. Let them wage their inner war without dragging you into battle. You don't have to be the emotional punching bag. You don't have to carry the weight of their projection. You can set it down every time without apology, and with time, something deeper settles in, a knowing, a calm, a certainty that you are not what happens to you. You are what you choose to do with it, and the less you react, the more clearly you see, the more still you become, the more powerful your presence becomes. Because people feel it. They may not understand it, but they feel it. The way you don't flinch, the way you don't argue, the way you don't chase, the way you don't need the last word. That kind of energy cannot be faked. It's earned through practice, through patience, through failing and choosing again. And the more you choose peace, the more it becomes your identity. Not a goal you reach for, but a place you live from.